Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to resume our talks about poetry and specifically analysis of poetry as a coded communication. We've discussed that. We've discussed a few different poets and writers, including The City and the Sea, as well as the idea that in terms of poetry being symbolism, as well as an encapsulation of time and a sort of instruction therein, it's also a record. And the symbols mean something therein. And I mentioned the other day that birds have been a symbol of within poetry and writing and religion, and this goes to religion and myth, right? It predates, which goes hand in hand with the state. They were never separate. That's a modern invention, but it all tends in one direction in one way. And in terms of the true history of the liberation of life, that was never the state's province, and that was never the state's. Well, back when they were closer to one myriad organism, that was closer. That was natural humanity. That was a different place and time, right? People and morality have changed immensely since then, and they will continue to, as whatever their circumstances necessitate. So today I have a little ditty by, let's see, her name is Sara Teasdale, and this one is called There Will Come Soft Rains. She lived 1884 to 1933. It begins wartime, so you can assume she saw the First World War, or at least what was going on. The world's been at war forever, right? So, but at that time, people were beginning to see the horrors of mechanized warfare and how quickly you could dispose of people. So she goes, there will come soft rains and the smell of the ground, and swallows circling with their shimmering sound, and frogs in the pools singing at night, and wild plum trees in tremulous white. Robins will wear their feathery fire, whistling their whims on a low fence wire. And not one will know of the war, not one will care at last when it is done. Not one would mind neither bird nor tree if mankind perished utterly. And spring herself, when she woke at dawn, would scarcely know that we were gone. So it's easy to understand, like within a high art like poetry, as well as something like a low art like comedy. You could look at both of those and see where certain accusations and insults are made within both comedy, poetry, right, literature, where if you made them in a vulgar way, people will not forgive you. They might even kill you. But if you sublimate it into poetry, into song, into a message, into something that people can actually take without understanding, essentially, if you can turn it into a pill, basically, if you can kind of just get along, if you can make yourself invisible almost, right? But there's something to what she's saying here that, within these forms of art, that there's since it's sublimated personal feeling to the quote unquote impersonal or the mass consumable, then what we see is on the other side of the fence is that it is a very personal affair, and that so within these arts, there's a lot of accusations, there's a lot of complaints, there's also a lot of hatred. And this is why when I constantly say that tone matters most in communication, doesn't matter what, doesn't matter where. I've said this time and time again in my image consulting series, and I'll continue to say it in my poetry and my literary analysis series, and that's that tone is the most important thing in the world, the conveyance of emotion. And so if you're dealing with civilized people, there's a million ways to frighten them or concern them, and there's only a handful of ways that they'll accept you. And that's if you join in and play the moral game. The moral game is that razor wire, right? That tremulous white upon which everyone tries to stand, but which necessitates all the accusations in the first place. Because without designations of good and evil and how that's manifest both actually and symbolically, because the symbols of power are still power, then who is there to care? What is there to matter? She's talking about, if you translate this, mechanized warfare to its furthest conclusion is total destruction, right? That's the theory. So she's saying if the human race went extinct, it's in fact true that when the birds awoke, they would, in nature itself, biology itself, would not notice or care that man and woman are gone. And you could say, why? Why wouldn't nature care? Isn't there some impersonal deity? Isn't there some permanence? Why shouldn't someone or something care? And I guess the short answer would be just take it physically, take it materially, right? Westerners can understand materialism. If there's nobody there to care, what is there? If if you have a human world, even if it still has all the human accoutrements and the imitation and the appearance of a human world, but there's actually not a single living body who cares, then what is there? That sounds like a dead world. And I guess the spookiest thing about arms and the arms race is that what you see with humanity, no one tries something once that was successful without doing it again, right? So there's this theory that, total war can't happen again. War can't happen again. Nuclear war won't happen again. No, no, no. Technology and history tell us everything happens again. It all returns, just like the birds, just like wartime. These days, wartime never goes away. But so I didn't pick this one by random or by chance, and every detail matters here. And also, American writer Ray Bradbury, right, did a lot of fiction, a lot of horror. He did famously, his most famous novel is the dystopic novel Fahrenheit 451, where books are burned in mass. And it's like, no, looks like in this case, Ray Bradbury actually, again, he took the satire that far for a reason. But then I would say what he got wrong was the inverse was, hey, there's books everywhere. They can be expensive. They can also be free, but there's information everywhere. And what you see is no one cares. You don't need, like, governments won't need to burn books because people don't read them, and increasingly so. Who needs books when you got mindless entertainment and distraction and other things as well? So there's many layers to these kinds of satires, as well as the poetry itself in this case. And going on to Ray Bradbury's short story, There Will Come Soft Rains. Let's see, what year was it written? I want to say it was written in the 40s or the 50s. So I don't know if I think Sara Teasdale never was able to see nuclear war. But then Ray Bradbury said, hold my beer. I got this for you. So there will come soft rains. In the living room, the voice clock sang, tick tock, 7 o'clock, time to get up, time to get up. 7 o'clock, as if it were afraid that nobody would. The morning house lay empty. The clock ticked on, repeating and repeating its sound into the emptiness. 7-9, breakfast time, 7-9. In the kitchen, the breakfast stove gave a hissing sigh and ejected from its warm interior 8 pieces of perfectly browned toast, 8 eggs sunny side up, 16 slices of bacon, 2 coffees, and 2 cool glasses of milk. Right? It's a smart house. Today is August 4th, 2026, said a second voice from the kitchen ceiling. In the city of Allendale, California. It repeated the date 3 times for memory's sake. Today is Mr. Featherstone's birthday. Today is the anniversary of Tiltia's marriage. Insurance is payable, as are the water, gas, and light bills. Beep boop. Somewhere in the walks, relays clicked, memory tapes glided under electric eyes. 8-1, tick-tock, 8-1 o'clock, off to school, off to work, run, 8-1. But no doors slammed, no carpets took the soft tread of rubber heels. It was raining outside. The weather box on the front door sang quietly. Rain, rain, go away, umbrellas, raincoats for today. And the rain tapped on the house empty, echoing. Outside, the garage chimed and lifted its door to reveal the waiting car. After a long wait, the door swung down again. At 8:30, the eggs were shriveled and the toast was like stone. An aluminum wedge scraped them into the sink, where hot water whirled them down a metal throat which digested and flushed them away to the distant sea. The dirty dishes were dropped into a hot water and emerged twinkling dry. Oh, and by the way, all writers pay attention. You hear his use of words, you hear his flow and his rhythm. It's also very characteristic of this era and this time, especially with the more pulpy the material. But even then, you see what he does with words. He's very good. I'd argue there's probably, for all the writer wannabes out there and imitators who eventually might be artists, there's probably few who can actually write this good anymore. 9:15 sang the clock, time to clean. Out of warrens in the wall, tiny robot mice darted. The rooms were acrawl with the small cleaning animals, all rubber and metal. They thudded against chains, whirling their mustache runners, kneading the rug napped, suckling gently at hidden dust. Then, like mysterious invaders, they popped into their burrows. Their pink eyes, electric eyes faded. The house was clean. And so these are all like a bunch of mini little Hoovers, or what are they called? Are they called Hoovers? No, those are the vacuum cleaners, but not the dust devils, the little robot ones, the Roombas. Yeah, like a bunch of little Roombas, but they're animal shaped. 10 o'clock. The sun came out from behind the rain. The house stood alone in a city of rubble and ashes. This was the one house left standing. At night, the ruined city gave off a radioactive glow which could be seen for miles. 10:15. The garden sprinklers whirled up in golden founts, filling the soft morning air with scatterings of brightness. The water pelted window panes, running down the charred west side where the house had been burned, evenly free of its white paint. The entire west face of the house was black, save for 5 places. Here the silhouette and paint of a man mowing a lawn. Here is in a photograph a woman bent to pick flowers. Still further over, their images burned on wood in one titanic instant. A small boy, hands flung into the air higher up, the image of a thrown ball, and opposite him a girl, hands raised to catch a ball which never came down. The 5 spots of paint, the man, the woman, the children, the ball remained. The rest was a thin charcoaled layer. The gentle sprinkler rain filled the garden with falling light. Until this day, how well the house had kept its peace, how carefully it had inquired, "Who goes there? What's the password?" And getting no answer from lonely foxes and whining cats, it had shut up its windows and drawn shades in an old maidenly preoccupation with self-protection which bordered on a mechanical paranoia. Ooh, see, do you see the satire? He's not talking, right? He's saying the house had become mechanical, the people had become mechanical. It quivered at each sound, the house did. If a sparrow brushed a window, the shade snapped up. The bird startled flew off. No, not even a bird must touch the house. It's so well protected, right? 12 noon. A dog whined, shivering on the front porch. The front door recognized the dog voice and opened. The dog, once huge and fleshy, but now gone to bone and covered with sores, moved in and through the house, tracking mud. Behind it whirred angry mice, angry at having to pick up and angry at inconvenience. For not a leaf fragment had blew in the door, with the wall panels flipped open and the copper scrap rats flashing swiftly out. So it's kind of steampunk. The offending dust hair or paper seized in miniature steel jaws was racing back to the burrows. There down tubes was fed into the cellar. It was dropped into the sighing vent in the incinerator, which sat like evil Baal in a dark corner. It's almost like Illusion Fahrenheit 451, and I think this might have even been prior to 1984. So that just idea of burning evidence is, it's well understood. The dog ran upstairs, hysterically yelping to each door, at last realizing, as the house realized, that only silence was here. It sniffed the air and scratched the kitchen door. Behind the door, the stove was making pancakes, which filled the house with rich baked odor and scent of maple syrup. The dog frothed at the mouth, lying at the door, sniffing, its eyes turning to fire. It ran wildly in circles, biting at its tail, spun in a frenzy, and died. It lay in the parlor for an hour. 2 o'clock, sang a voice. Delicately sensing decay at last, the regiments of mice hummed out as slowly as brown, blown gray leaves in an electrical wind. 2:15. The dog was gone. In the cellar, the incinerator glowed suddenly, and a whirl of sparks leaped up the chimney. 2:35. Bridge tables sprouted from patio walls. Playing cards fluttered onto pads in a shower of pips. So, like, the algorithm's already running everything for them, right? The humans aren't even necessary. Do you see that? Like, they weren't, and then if you look at this as a remnant of their life, they weren't even making choices apparently anymore. The house had it all on schedule. So bridge tables sprouted from patio walls, playing cards fluttered, music played, but the tables were silent and the cards untouched. At 4 o'clock, the tables folded like great butterflies back against the paneled walls. 4:30. The nursery walls glowed. Animals took shapes: yellow giraffes, blue lions, pink antelopes, lilac, lilac panthers cavorting in crystal substance. The walls were glass. They looked out upon color and fantasy. Hidden films clocked through well-oiled sprockets, and the walls lived. The nursery, right, like telescreens. The nursery floor was woven to resemble a crisp cereal meadow. Over this ran aluminum roaches and iron crickets, and in the hot still air butterflies of delicate red tissue wavered among the sharp aroma of animal spores. animal spores. There was a sound like a great matted yellow hive of bees within a dark bellows, the lazy bumble of a purring lion, and there was the patter of okapi feet and the murmur of a fresh jungle rain, like other hoofs, falling upon the summer-starched grass. Now the walls dissolved into distances of parched grass, mile on mile in warm, endless sky. The animals drew away into thorn breaks and water holes. It was the children's hour. 5 o'clock, the bath filled with clear hot water. 6, 7, 8 o'clock, the dinner dishes manipulated like magic tricks. And in the study, a click. In the metal and opposite the hearth where a fire now blazed up warmly. By the way, I'm seeing all this very clearly in my head. I don't know what the viewer or the listener might hear, but I can see it all. A cigar popped out, half an inch soft gray ash on it, smoking and waiting. 9 o'clock. Excuse me. The bed warmed their hidden circuits, for nights were cool here. 9:05. A voice spoke from the study ceiling. Mrs. McClellan, which poem would you like this evening? The house was silent. The voice said at last, Since you expressed no preference, I shall select a poem at random. Quiet music rose to the back of the voice. Sara Teasdale, as I recall, your favorite. There will come soft rains and the smell of the ground, and swallows circling with their shimmering sound, and frogs in the pools singing at night, and wild plum trees in tremulous white. Robins will wear their feathery fire, whistling their whims on a low fence wire. And not one will know of the war, not one will care at last when it is done. Not one would mind neither bird nor tree if mankind perished utterly. And spring herself, when she woke at dawn, would scarcely know that we were gone. Like I said, sometimes you can hear malice, sometimes you can hear hatred and veiled lies, morality kind of twisted and bent and hidden within poetry and religion and all these things. But in this case, she's just pointing out if there's nobody there to care, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the structure survives, but the people don't. The fire burned on the stone and hearth, and the cigar fell away into a mound of quiet ash on its tray. The empty chairs faced each other between the silent walls, and the music played. At 10 o'clock the house began to die. The wind blew, a falling tree bough crashed through the kitchen window, cleaning solvent bottle chattered over the stove. The room was ablaze in an instant. Fire, screamed a voice. The house lights flashed. Water pumps shot water from the ceilings, but the solvent spread on the linoleum, licking, eating under the kitchen door, while the voices took it up in chorus. Fire, fire, fire! The house tried to save itself. Doors sprang tightly shut, but the windows were broken by the heat, and the wind blew and sucked upon the fire. The house gave ground as the fire and 10 billion angry sparks moved with flaming ease from room to room and then up the stairs, while scurrying water rats squeaked from walls, pistoled their water, and ran for more, and the wall sprays let down showers of mechanical rain. But too late, somewhere sighing, a pump shrugged to a stop. The quenching rain ceased. The reserve water supply, which had filled baths and washed dishes for many quiet days, was gone. The fire crackled up the stairs. It fed upon Picassos and Matisses in the upper halls like delicacies, baking off the oily flesh, tenderly crisping the canvases into black shavings. Now the fire lay in beds, stood in windows, changing the color of drapes. And then reinforcements from attic trap doors, blind robot faces peered down with faucet mouths, gushing green chemical. The fire backed off, as even an elephant must at the sight of a deadly snake. Now there were 20 snakes whipped over the floor, killing the fire with a clear, cold venom of green froth. But the fire was clever. It sent a flame outside the house, up through the attic to the pumps there, right? You can see it's nature run wild, essentially, right? The mechanics are left to fight it even, but nature is clever. An explosion, the attic brain which directed the pumps was shattered into brown shrapnel on the beams. The fire rushed back into every closet and felt the clothes hanging there. The house shuddered, oak bone on bone, its bared skeleton cringing from the heat, its wire, its nerves revealed as if a surgeon had torn the skin off to let the red veins and capillaries quiver in the scalded air. Help, help, fire, run, run! Heat snapped mirrors like the first brittle winter ice, and the voices wailed, Fire, fire, run, run! Like a tragic nursery rhyme, a dozen voices, high, low, like children dying in a forest, alone, alone, and the voices fading as the wires popped their sheathings like hot chestnuts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 voices died. In the nursery, the jungle burned. Blue lions roared, purple giraffes bounded off, the panthers ran in circles, changing color, and 10 million animals running before the fire. vanished off toward a distant steaming river. 10 more voices died. In the last instant under the fire avalanche, other choruses, oblivious, could be heard announcing the time, cutting the lawn by remote control mower, or setting an umbrella frantically out and in. The slamming and opening of a front door, a thousand things happening like a clock shop when each clock strikes the hour insanely before or after the other. A scene of maniacal confusion, yet unity, a singing, screaming, a few last cleaning mice darting bravely out to carry the horrid ashes away. Oh man, you see the layers of metaphor and the irony and so on and so forth. And one voice, with sublime disregard for the situation, read poetry aloud in the fiery study until all the film spools burned, until all the wires withered and the circuits cracked. Well, you're welcome. The fire burst the house and let it slam flat down, puffing out skirts of spark and smoke. In the kitchen, an instant before the rain of fire and timber, the stove could be seen making breakfast at a psychopathic rate. 10 dozen eggs, 6 loaves of toast, 20 bacon strips, while eaten by fire. Started the stove working again, hysterically hissing. The crash, the attic smashed into kitchen and parlor. The parlor into cellar, cellar into subcellar, deep freeze, armchair, film tape, circuits, beds, and all like skeletons thrown in a cluttered mound deep under, like a landfill, basically. Smoke and silence, a great quantity of smoke. Dawn showed faintly in the east. Among the ruins, one wall stood alone. Within the wall, a last voice said, over and over again, even as the sun rose to shine upon the heaped rubble and steam, "Today is August 5th, 2026. Today is August 5th, 2026. Today's lesson is over. Hope you like the poetry. Hope you like the story. Wherever this finds you, I hope it finds you well. And take care of yourself.